Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time than I'd ever get on the radio with interesting people. This week's going to be quite an interesting one, or even more interesting than usual. Graeme Park.
Hello.
Welcome. I don't know how much fanboying I have ever done in an episode of Full Disclosure.
Okay.
But whatever that level might be, there's a very real chance that the record will be broken today. Superstar DJ. And huge inspiration. I don't know if you know this. Life-changing inspiration on 16-year-old me, actually.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Okay. I know. I remember once responding to one of your tweets, and you said something to that effect, and I was like, wow. Because it's reciprocal. I listen to you on the radio, and I'm a fan of what you do.
But not during your most formative moments or your most formative years. When did you first hear the phrase superstar DJ? It wasn't a thing when you were growing up.
No, it wasn't. It was something that appeared in the early 90s, and I just thought, hang on a minute, this is a classic case of oxymoron, I think, because it's developed. I think the music is more important than the person playing it, and I still believe that. Obviously, you have to have a presence on social media, and you have to shout about what you do, because the nature of DJing, club DJing, is a lot more competitive than it used to be. But essentially, I do miss the days when the DJ was in the corner, nobody could see them, in a darkened booth, and everyone was dancing, just enjoying the music. Now, admittedly, yes, I've worked hard for 40 years.
It's been quite kind to you, the opposite scenario.
Well, I know. I mean, and I was an early adopter of social media, and I'm still quite active on it, but I think, I miss the days when the music was more important than... It shouldn't be about the DJ, it should be about the music first and foremost.
And yet you were at the very vanguard of that moment when people would ask who's playing. They wouldn't say what's the music going to be. You'd know roughly what your favourite DJ's genre was going to be in, but people would say who's playing tonight, or who's on, who are we going to see, and you'd travel up and down the country to follow a DJ.
Well, yes, that doesn't really happen as much. I mean, people still travel now to events, big headline events like Warehouse Project. When that's on, people travel all over, festivals. But back in the day, I was going to try not to say that phrase, but you know what I mean. Back in the day, when I started at the Garage Club in Nottingham in 1984, there were less DJs, there were less clubs. Clubs closed at 2, pubs closed at 11. But in the East Midlands, word would get round about this skinny, bald Scottish guy playing this kind of cool music that the major clubs weren't playing, and people would come from Derby and Leicester. And then I started doing the Midlands soul all day thing, and people would then start talking about the fact that I was doing it, because unlike the other soul all day DJs, I never used the mic. Right. I would never go, this one's for all the ladies in the house. You know what I mean?
Why not? Why did you never do
I would get a response from the crowd by mixing two records together. Because back in the day, obviously, I go back in the day again.
Let's never point out another back, because I'm going to say it as well. Let's just roll with it.
It was all about, you had to use vinyl. You had to learn. Mixing as a skill you had to learn. Nobody could teach you. On another note, I don't think you can teach someone to DJ, but that's by the by. I was known for mixing records together, because I used to listen to... I had a friend who moved to New York, and he'd send me cassettes of Frankie Knuckles on the radio, and Tony Humphries on the radio, and Marley Marl on the radio, and I would listen to those cassettes and go, what are they doing? And then just worked it out,
We've jumped ahead, as we will no doubt do quite a lot, from back in the day to a little later in the day. But in 1984... most people, if you said DJ, they would expect you to turn up with a van.
Yes.
Chaddesley Corbett Village Hall, or some such, and play all the latest tracks from the hit parade, wouldn't they?
That's it. I did that once.
Did you?
When I was at school, Kirkcaldy High School. Me and a friend who I'm still good friends with, Gordon Povey, we did the Hiroshima Roadshow. Why we call it that, I don't know. It's probably 1977 or 78 or something like that. But yeah, my sort of DJing is you just turn up with your music, whether that was on vinyl or today, whether it's on a little USB or on a laptop. Although having said that, you still get inquiries from people via my website. Do you do private events?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And you get the discussion going, and then they go, and what about equipment? Do you bring your own equipment? You still get that.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you have to hire that in, you know. But yeah, that's what people thought about DJs.
So it was never Graeme Park and his wheels of steel travelling around the byways and highways of the East Midlands.
But I've got to say, a very good friend of mine who used to work in the music, well, he still does work in the music business, Simon Gavin, he once said to me in the 90s, because I was on the road so much, he said, what you should do, Parky, you should buy a motorhome and live in the motorhome. And then, because obviously back in the 90s, not so much now because I'm older and wiser, but it was all back to my hotel room, wasn't it? He said, think of the party you could have in your motorhome. You could park it outside the Hacienda. And I'm like, but the thing is, it was the 90s, so I actively considered it. And actually, but of course then you had to buy Auto Trader and look for them, whereas now you'd be online,
pick one up
a little bit drunk. Exactly. What
have I done? The next morning, you've got no memory. Memory of buying it at all.
Exactly.
Well, let's start in Kirkcaldy then, shall we? Is that where Gordon Brown went to school as well?
Yes, we went to the same high school, and obviously he was there like probably 10 years before me.
Yeah.
And I remember when the internet became a thing, somebody said, Parky, if you looked at the Kirkcaldy High School Wikipedia page, you're down there as one of the most famous pupils. And there's me, there's a Forrester Adam, who's in my year at school, who's some famous chemist, Gordon Brown, and a few others.
My mentor, Richard Park, the guy that used to be on Capital Radio.
Right, now, of course, I met when I worked for Key 103, I met Richard Park, and some people actually used to think that we were related, that he was my dad.
You can't say that on here. They thought that you were his dad.
But yeah, so and the fact we share a surname, and he's both
and a love Scottish. Of music and a love of radio.
Exactly. And although I've always been on the radio, I've always been a specialist DJ,
of course,
so I don't really have to worry about the playlist. I did learn a lot from Richard Park, but he would give me some. If I was you, I would think about maybe doing your links like this, and I find it absolutely fascinating stuff. And a lot of it's kind of stuck in there.
Same. Even though I don't play music, his radio craft is in my bones now. So, what were you like at school?
I was a good pupil. I managed to get everything. I didn't really work hard. I just managed to get the grades needed, and never really got into trouble. Although going to a Scottish high school in the 70s, got the belt.
Oh, really?
What for having my top button undone.
Amazing.
That was 70s education for you in Scotland. I was at a dental appointment and came back. Obviously, take your time coming back, don't you? It was a hot early summer's day, so blazer on the shoulder, top button undone, and I'm walking down the corridor, and the rules were you had to walk on the left, and then our rector, he wasn't a headmaster, he was a rector, Mr. Fraser, who used to wear these gowns, and suddenly I saw him like walking down with his gown sweeping. He's like, "You boy, outside my office now," and carried on walking. Now, when you're like a good pupil, oh no, what have I done? And foolishly went to outside his office, and then he turned up and said, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Oh, blown this, haven't I?" Anyway, he remembered I got the belt for walking on the wrong side of the corridor, not having my blazer on and having my top button undone, despite me trying to say I'm just back from the dentist and it's hot. Made me late for my physics lesson, so I got the belt again.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah,
so quite an authoritarian regime and quite an academic one as well, with the capes and the gowns. But
I'm not sure they still do that anymore, because
I'm sure they don't.
I've been back a couple of times to kind of talk about my life to a load of 14, 15-year-olds who really aren't that bothered.
It's better than a physics lesson.
No, exactly. But yeah, they all wore capes, they all gave the belt, and it was very, very strict. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but the last couple of times I've been back, I've always been very disappointed about how the uniform's not as smart as it used to be.
But you didn't have sort of academic ambitions. You just wanted to get through the day, or did you?
No.
What did mum and dad expect of you at school?
Well, my mum and dad just let me get on with what I wanted to do. I was always into music. I used to play. My late grandfather, who was like one of my heroes, gave me his clarinet when I was about 11. So I learned the clarinet, but then realised that I wanted to play saxophone. So I had a Saturday job in a record shop which was I was the envy of all my school friends, because I worked in Bruce's record shop, so I had access to all this amazing music, and I saved up my money and bought a saxophone and learned to play along with X-Ray Specs records. And of course, clarinet and saxophone the same fingering, so it's quite easy. And I got told off in the school orchestra for not reading the music. I've forgotten his name, but the music teacher who was conducting would like tap the music and I go, Park, you're not reading the music. So I would just remember it, you know. And I used to then just taught myself how to play saxophone better by improvising along with records with saxophone on, Psychedelic Furs, for example. And then my mum had loads of like soul Motown records, so I used to play along with them. So trying to learn to play along with Junior Walker and the All Stars was like, wow, this is difficult. And that's how I learned to DJ. I'd listen to the American.
So if you liked it, you could put the graft in, because there's a lot of man hours in learning these things.
Well, there is, but you know, we used to when I was about 16. I always looked a bit older, so I was always the one who could go to the bar and order the round for all of our friends. But so I used to hang out with my friends, but we used to play in bands and go out to, what was the club in Kirkcaldy? Oh, Jackie O's. Sadly not there anymore. But that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be in a band, really. But then my dad came home one day when I was in the 5th year at school. Good news, everyone, I've got a new job. We're moving to the East Midlands.
Gosh.
And I'm like, I want to do 6th year. I want to finish 6th year. So my family, that's my mum, dad, and my 2 younger brothers, moved to the East Midlands. I stayed with this neighbour who was a widow, who used to come and visit us and was a great laugh until I lived with her. Oh, my God.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You're not going out dressed like that and all that stuff.
So much stricter with her than being at
really
home.
strict. And we just didn't get on. But I finished 6th year, went down to the East Midlands to visit. And because growing up in Fife, although I was born in Aberdeen and grew up in Fife, Edinburgh was quite close. But Scotland's got 4 cities, right? They're all quite far apart. Suddenly I'm in the East Midlands. My dad was an area manager for Next. So every morning he'd get up at 5 a.m. and go all around the Midlands and the kind of south of England. And after a while I said, Dad, where are you going tomorrow? I'm going to Birmingham, Coventry, Walsall, Wolverhampton, and then I'm coming home. Can I come with you?
Kidderminster, probably popped in.
Oh, yeah,
Did he
all
pop
that.
into Kidderminster?
Yeah, probably. And he'd go down as far as Watford and Bedford.
Yeah, gosh.
And as far up as Barrow.
Right.
That was
It's
a
a
journey.
big patch then.
So he said, you got to get up at 5. I said, Dad, that's fine. So in his Opel Manta company car, me and my dad would do some bonding, and then he'd go, right, I'm at this store for 2 hours, and I would go and visit all these record shops, in all these independent record shops in all these Midland cities, and thought, I quite like it down here.
Right.
So my mum and dad were very pleased when I said, I think I might stay.
It's quite it's quite liberal approach to parenting. What would you have done otherwise? They were cool about you staying in Scotland.
They were.
You were quite strong-headed, were you? I mean, you were pretty clear that that's what you wanted.
Yeah,
to do.
I did want to finish finish school, finish 6th year, because I'm all my
They'd
friends.
be conscious of disrupting your life completely as well, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, but I've never ever, even now, I never think that far ahead.
Sure.
I mean, what I did kind of want to do was, I kind of harboured ideas of being a journalist.
Okay.
Because I was used to read Sounds religiously, and NME. And I thought, I wouldn't mind writing for Sounds and NME. And I've always, which is why I like listening to you on the radio, I've always been a bit of a political geek, even when I was at school. So you can imagine the past 5 years. Oh, wow, yes. Lots to get your teeth stuck into. But as a DJ, you can't really have those conversations.
You've just got to know your audience.
Oh yeah, but you know, because I'm like 61 now, a lot of my friends, no, that's unfair.
Sure.
A lot of people my age, some people my age, have been dragged into that.
They're supposed to, aren't you? Supposed to veer. Supposed to veer a bit.
But there's a lot of tinfoil hats going on,
yes.
And there's a lot of people who believe all this conspiracy nonsense. So you have to. So sometimes, if you're going to a club, if I'm going to DJ and you're having dinner with people, I'm very conscious of the fact I don't want to have a full-blown argument.
Well, that's a subculture thing as well. Actually, I don't think it's an age thing necessarily, except that. So the people you're describing will have achieved a sort of degree of profile or success, but because it's a subculture, they think that the man is doing people down, and you do your own research. That's really interesting. I wouldn't have called that politics. Of course, it is politics.
It is politics. But people who have a kind of acid house peace and love and unity background.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Have been dragged into this.
But I get
nonsense.
that. I get that. I mean, it's still nonsense, but I can see how that avenue exists for people.
I understand it, but
especially with attempts to shut down raves and shut down parties. That notion of society being oppressive and dedicated to destroying that culture, maybe leaves you susceptible to some of the silliness.
Potentially. Sometimes, though, I don't do it now. But if you've had a few drinks and you go, well, actually, hang on a minute, you can't seriously believe that. Yeah. Before you know it, you're drawn into this.
It's a living. Tell me where the line is between an enthusiasm and whatever is 5 notches up from an enthusiasm, because almost everyone is enthusiastic about music when they're teenagers, but you were in a different space.
Oh, I mean, in fact, my grandpa had his own orchestra.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the George Wood Orchestra, which was massive in Scotland. Used to play on the Scottish BBC Light programme. Right. Played for the Queen Mother at Balmoral. My mum was a singer. Of course, then obviously she got pregnant with me in 1963. So looking at those pictures of my grandpa with his clarinet, his violin, and the GW on the front of and the orchestra, and his slick back hair. Well, that's the one thing I do miss, my hair. I thought, wow, that looks really cool. And so I was always into music. But see, all my friends at school were into progressive rock, which I never really got. I was more glam rock.
Okay.
So
I'm more T-Rex than Deep Purple.
One of the first records I bought, Children of the Revolution, still got it. And I was very struck by Roxy Music and Bowie and Mick Ronson on Top of the Pops, whereas all my friends were Genesis, Yes, ELP, which I couldn't stand. Now I get it now. So at parties, spin the bottle, dimmed lights, and whenever no one was paying attention, I would sneak on some Damned or Clash or Sex Pistols. I really loved punk rock when it came along, but punk rock kind of morphed into new wave, and then that got me into the Americans like Talking Heads and Blondie, and of course they were making funk records and disco records, and that's when I realised I had really eclectic taste. So I often get asked, what were you into as a teenager? And my answer to that is everything. I remember at my granny's house, they lived in a tenement. My granny and grandpa lived in a tenement in Aberdeen, and with an outside toilet. I remember getting up early one morning down for the toilet, and I was going downstairs in my pyjamas and dressing gown, and Edith, who lived underneath the flat below, had a kitchen window open, and Radio 1 was on, and that's when I first heard I Feel Love by Donna Summer coming out of her kitchen window. I was like, what the hell is this? And although it was 77, so I was into The Clash, but then I heard this as well. I mean, The Clash made disco records too, you see.
So you were never a snob?
Never a snob. And if there's one thing I hate, well, hate's a strong word, if one thing that really gets on my nerves is musical purists, people who get really hung up about how credible a record is and stuff. I take the view, if a record is good, but crucially, if I like it, it's getting played. I can't play a record I don't like, and I never have. However
big it is, or however many people want you to.
No, exactly. And sometimes that's difficult at private bookings.
Right, yes.
Because when I do corporate events or private bookings, then obviously you get rewarded and you have a client. So that can be awkward, but usually by the time they've had a few drinks, they don't bother you. But in a club, sometimes if someone comes up and goes, Parky, come on, Parky, get some proper old school on, and that's just the women.
What happens? What happens when you hear a tune then that is right?
Well, I mean, what I spend. So, for example, today coming out of London, all I listen to is my September tunes playlist. So every new piece of music, not every one I receive because that'd be too many, but the ones that I'd listened to and thought this might work, I put them in a playlist for the whole month. And I, when I'm on my bike or in my car or on the train or whatever, or taking the dog for a walk, I put it on September playlist, press shuffle. Obviously that playlist runs out tomorrow and we start the October one tomorrow. And I just press shuffle and you get to know the music and the ones you don't like. Delete.
How many tracks will be on there to start with?
this month there's probably there'll be over 100.
And how many of them will make the cut?
Well, you see, there's two cuts. There's two cuts. There's a Graeme Park radio show cut,
of course,
and there's the club cut. So more will make the radio show because with club gigs now, it depends on the audience.
Right.
I have three audiences. There's rather an older audience who are over 50 and old enough to know better, and who've returned to clubbing after their kids have grown up, or after they've taken semi-retirement, or got money and time on their hands. So you got the older crowd. I did a gig like that on Saturday in Lichfield. Amazing. Older crowd, you're mainly playing older stuff, but with the odd new one in there that sounds like it was made 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you've got the younger crowd. So I often, because I've got this legacy, and I'm seen as one of this heritage DJs, and because of the Hacienda connection, I will get asked sometimes by young promoters, will you go and play to my underground club? And everyone's dead young. They don't care what you play.
No.
And that means I get to play loads of new stuff, but lots of obscure old stuff. And then most gigs are the mix of old and young, and that I find amazing, because the young element, they bring the energy, and the older crowd kind of get caught in with the energy.
Yeah.
So when we do when the Hacienda does the warehouse project in December, 8,000 people. I can tell you now for a fact, because we've done it about 5 or 6 years in a row, apart from lockdown. 80% of the crowd who come to the warehouse project weren't born when the Hacienda closed, so they don't come with that baggage that people who used to go to Hacienda come with.
Yeah.
So
you thrive on that.
Oh, yeah. So me and Mike Pickering will do a set together. I'll do a set on my own in a small room. Then Mike Pickering and I will do back to back in the concourse, and the pair of us just do what the hell we like. And 80% of that crowd are going mental. Of the 20% who used to go to Hacienda, half of them get dragged into it and love it, but the other half of that 20% will be like, you didn't really, this isn't what you played. They're
stroking their beards.
They go, why you didn't play this at the Hacienda? I go, mate, come on, it's 2024.
What do you want?
And I became a DJ because I would hear this amazing new music, like the early hip hop tracks, the early house tracks, and I wanted to play them to people and share them. And I still feel that way. I want to share new music with people.
Is that the defining impulse then? If we had to find something that you could file everything under, everything that makes either cut, it's because it gives you feel an urge to play it to other people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, so
that's how it can be so eclectic and so diverse.
Exactly.
But what they all have in common is Graeme Park, want to play this to people.
That's exactly why. I mean, if I had to play the same records every weekend, I couldn't do it. Yes, some of my peers do stick in that big classic sets. I get it. It's fine. But if I'm on a big lineup of when there's, I mean, don't get me started on big lineups with short DJ sets. But if you've got loads of DJs on who are of my generation, I know for a fact that they will play all the big tunes. What I like to do then is dig out the tunes that people have from 20 or 30 years ago that people have forgotten about. And when you see those smiles, oh my God, I've not heard this for 25 years. That's why I get a buzz out. But equally, there's a lot of young producers. My son, although he's hard techno, I'm sure he'll mellow with it. But there's a lot of young producers who make electronic music, house music, and they're taking their influence from 80s and 90s. So they make music that sounds 20 years old.
Yeah.
So my view is, with a crowd that are there for the vibe, if it's an older crowd, slip those ones in and they'll enjoy it because it fits the vibe.
So you're constantly thinking.
Constantly. Which is, it does involve a lot of concentration.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more concentration it involves. But as someone who used to drink a lot, I don't really drink anymore. In fact, I gave up for 4 years. I found my concentration levels are much better, and I enjoy it more than I did in the 90s because I'm more aware of everything.
More present.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just able to concentrate more. And there's less, when you're partying with everyone else, you tend to, there's a little bit of autopilot comes into play. But the thing is, concentration's can be broken by someone who wants to cut. If you do a big festival or the Warehouse Project, no one can get near you. But if you're doing a small underground club or this gig I did on Saturday at the weekend, people can come right up to you. I've never ever been the sort of person to ignore and go, "Would you just leave me alone?" I'm trying to go, because I take the view, if it wasn't for the people on the dance floor, I wouldn't have the privilege of continuing to do what I do. So it's like 2 minutes of your life. And they just want to.
And they go away so happy.
I know how all
they go away so happy.
I know how all the camera phones work as well, because people are so drunk. I'm gonna give me your phone.
I'll do it.
There you go. Thank you. But if they break that concentration, it can be difficult, because I'm always thinking 2 or 3 records
like
ahead.
Chess.
Exactly. It's like chess. Yes.
Let's back up.
That makes me Grandmaster P.
It does. Well played. So, but I think your dad presumably had a date in Nottingham, and you discovered Selector disc. This is a seminal moment.
No, I went to Nottingham regularly because it was the nearest city to Grantham, where we lived, home of Mrs. Thatcher, which was hilarious.
Your life is dotted with prime ministerial references.
Yes, it is. I've thought that before. Yeah, Brown and Thatcher. Yeah, and Nottingham was like a short train ride away.
Right.
And there was a record shop in Nottingham called Selector Disc. And there was 2 branches, Market Street, Burrismith Gate. I liked the Burrismith Gate branch. It was smaller. Got to know the guys who worked in there, and I was in there all the time. And then I ended up moving to Nottingham because my dad came home one day and said, "Good news, everyone, we're moving back to Scotland." And my mum was like, "Yeah." And my younger brothers had no choice because they were still at school. And I'm like, "Whoa, I'm sorry. This time,
settled in.
Definitely."
Right.
After 2 years in Grantham, I think Nottingham's great. And I moved to Nottingham, and I was in the record shop, got to know the people. And I remember one afternoon, "Graeme, didn't you say you worked in a record shop at school?" "I did." "Are you familiar with the master bag system?" "Of course." "Can you help out behind the counter?" I ended up helping out behind the counter, and then not long after that became part-time. And then a guy called Mel, who ran the singles and second-hand department, just left one day, and I was asked, "Do you want to run the singles and second-hand department?" And to me, I played in a band. I was now full-time in a record shop looking after singles, i.e. all the new stuff,
everything,
and second-hand,
so
all the classic
Aladdin's
stuff.
Cave.
Exactly. And it was like, I didn't go to university because the DJing started to take off.
Yeah.
But this was my. What
would you have studied if you had?
I did kind of apply to Manchester for a kind of politics, sociology type route.
Okay.
I loved sociology at school and college. I absolutely loved it.
But you love music more, even more.
Well, yeah. But
even
the
more.
thing is, though,
and hang on,
it's easier to play music than study sociology.
Yeah, well, you say that. Some people find it a lot easier to study sociology than they would to play like you play. But did you have any ambition in the conventional sense? Because for people who aren't watching this and are just listening, you kind of lit up at that moment when you just remembered that gig when Mel moved on and this door opened in front of you. You've got all the new stuff coming in on one hand, and then you've got all the old stuff, which is really exciting because every day is like a lucky dip. You don't know what's coming through the door, and that it looked as if that actually met all your needs. In that
absolutely.
Moment. Right.
I was happy as Larry, as they say. I was 19, 20. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I was 18, 19. That's right, because it was before I started DJing in '84, and I just loved it. People would come in and go, "I've got these old disco records," and I'd be like, "Not much call for these, mate. I can probably push it to a
sucking
$5."
Your teeth a bit.
Yeah. And then they go under the counter, and at the end of the day, I'm having these $5, yeah. But even not just disco, but like old funk, old soul, but even old psychedelic records. Right, and like that's how I discovered bands like The Doors and Love, because this Love I've heard of them. I put the record on. Alone Again comes blasting out, and I'm like, whoa, I'm having this as well.
So before we talk about the first DJing gig, when did you become, and it may be that part of the answer is the same, when did you come aware of the idea of actually merging 2 different tracks together? When did that?
Well,
you wouldn't be thinking like that now. You wouldn't be getting a Doors record in and then thinking, "Oh, do you know what that would go really well with, or what that would lead into?"
How I approached it. My first ever gig at the garage in Nottingham, because
Now this happened by accident.
It did because
your boss bought a club.
Yeah, so Brian Selby, the late Brian Selby, who owned Selector Disc, his office was on the same floor as the singles and second hand. His door was always open. He's always coming out in the kitchen and having a chat. And he came home from lunch he came back to the shop from lunch one day. You could tell he had a few pints. And he says, "Guess what I've just bought? I've just bought a nightclub." What nightclub is that, Brian? The Ad Lib Club. But that's a reggae club. Why have you bought that? It's not going to be a reggae club anymore. This weekend I'm renaming it and relaunching it as the Garage. I want it to be a cool kind of underground club, a bit like the WAG Club in London, that kind of vibe. And Graeme, I want you to DJ. I'm not a DJ. Yes, but I like the eclectic stuff you play. I said, but I'm in a band, working in a record shop. But then I didn't want to lose my job at the record shop because, like I said, I was the best situation I could imagine. So I gave it a go, and that first night it was literally I just went home and got my records, borrowed some from the shop, and when they said, right, on you go, I had 2 belt driven Citronic decks and a mixer, worked it out, and just what I did was play a record I liked, and then as it was fading out, worked out how to start the next one on time. So it wasn't about mixing.
On that night you worked this one? That first night?
Well, as someone who played in bands, played saxophone, I think that helped.
The language of rhythm and music, you were already
and
quite
then
fluent in.
As people came upstairs to check out what the Ad Lib had turned into, and heard me playing Cabaret Voltaire, Human League, New Order, Aztec Camera, Joy Division, and disco, soul, funk, and Motown, and just going to on to the next one, and then
were other DJs doing that? Because I'm thinking back to that era when I was a kid, and these would be the first discos that I went to. Didn't one song stop and then the other one started? Usually,
I wasn't really paying attention to all the DJs.
No,
to be honest,
well, that's the point, isn't it? Because you're not trying to second guess, because you're not a purist and you're not a snob.
No,
and you're not that fussed about what anybody else is doing. You're a proper enthusiast, and therefore your confidence in what other people are going to like is coming from your confidence or your knowledge of what you like.
Yeah, well, you say confidence, but I still
not even confidence.
I just stick to my lane. I'm aware of what others are doing because you have to be, but I don't get bothered about it. So a lot of my peers getting a right flap about this new breed of young DJ who's all over social media, who's all dancing and showing off, and they're more obsessed with the tech and the effects than the music. I'm like, why? I don't even bother about it.
Tide comes in, the tide goes out again, doesn't
10, 12 years ago with EDM, David Guetta becoming popular, Paris Hilton, a lot of my peers getting really angry about it. I'm like, why? Just stick to your own lane, concentrate on your own game. And that's what I've always done. But when I discovered, by listening to these tapes of American DJs, I didn't realise you needed Technics direct drive turntables to mix. I was trying to do it on belt driven decks, and when I found out, I had to persuade Brian Selby to fork out a lot of money to get them, and when he did, suddenly it was like an epiphany. I could suddenly change the pitch and mix and scratch. And then,
did you pick that up really quickly as well?
Yeah, I just listened to. This
is where turntables are an instrument. This is what a lot of people don't understand. It's like being able to play the piano or the saxophone.
They are an instrument. There's a real art to mixing vinyl, and the techniques have been carried through to modern technology. So the digital technology now is all based on mixing vinyl. The only difference is now more people are able to mix because the technology's democratized the whole thing.
Yes, of course.
But I do see some of I keep saying my peers, but you see a lot of people, DJs my age, who get really angry about how people use the sync button.
Sure.
Who cares? If that works for you, do it. Because at the end of the day,
but you wouldn't, though.
I wouldn't, and I don't. I use my favourite way of DJing is with a software called Serato, so I can use vinyl, blank vinyl discs to play digital music, but it looks like I'm playing vinyl. But I also use the Pioneer CDJ setup because that's amazing. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that the majority of people on the dance floor don't care what you're doing or what you're using. They just want to hear great music.
Well, some of us might quite like to see a little bit. The older generation would like the echoes of the past.
Well, with Hacienda Classical, I always use Serato with blank vinyl discs,
of course,
because I've got cameras on me, and people just want to see me doing the old scratching and spinning back.
You worked out from the tapes what other DJs in New York were doing.
I just listened to what they did and thought, all right, I see what he's doing. This record is
most people wouldn't have heard that.
Breaking. No, it's like Frankie Knuckles and Tony Humphries. and Marley Marl for the hip hop on Kiss FM and WBLS.
Yeah.
Every month he'd send me the cassettes, and I would send him cassettes. I would record my DJ sets and send them back to him. And funnily enough, I've always recorded my DJ sets, which is great because it saves time when you're doing a radio show. Do you know what I mean? But I would listen to what they were doing, go, I see what they're doing, I think I might try my hand at this. But when I got the Technics decks, it suddenly became
everything changed.
Easy
and
peasy.
Did the crowd know that? Did the crowd know everything was changing on those nights?
Well, yeah, because the Technics decks came along as music was changing. So before hip hop came along, it was a very eclectic mix. But then all the early Big Daddy Kane, Roxanne Shante, LL Cool J, Public Enemy stuff, that started to take over. And then in '86, those early house tracks started to appear. Like JM Silk Music is the Key. When I first heard that, I'm like, whoa, what the hell is this? So then the hip hop took over, then the house took over, and then by '88,
when you are setting sail for Manchester. But what was the scene like before that? How did the scene explode? I mean, because it's a weird coincidence. It's an alignment of the planets. You're in a relatively small club in a relatively small city, city, but somehow you've ended up on the peak of a surfing wave that is about to take over the entire country.
Well, you're right, but I don't know how that happened, because it wasn't like a conscious decision to go, right, here I am.
It wasn't exactly.
There's this amazing new music coming out. I'm going to really take over.
You were just feeding your own appetite and enthusiasm.
But the thing is, at the time, ID magazine, The Face magazine, and the late Blitz magazine would write about all the club scene in London, because they never ever ventured outside the M25.
No, of course.
But I was aware of what Mike Pickering was doing at Hacienda on Fridays, nude night, and then I used to pop up to Sheffield to the Jive Turkey nights. And as I kind of got more well known, when I had to give up working in the record shop, that did not go down well with Brian Selby.
Right.
But I've
created a monster.
I had to give up. When I gave up the band, that didn't go down very well. Right. Turning up to rehearsal, the band at the time was called Son of Sam, and I turned up to rehearsal. Parky, you've forgotten your saxophone. About that, lads. You know. So I gave up the record shop.
Did that happen really quickly? Did it
within about 3 or 4 months? Because
of getting the Technics.
No, of starting to DJ.
So from the first gig,
because I loved it so much, and then I started. Brian Selby then bought a club in Leicester called the Blue Note. No, sorry, the Fan Club. Club. And then there was a club in Derby called the Blue Note that said, "Would you come and DJ for us?" Okay. So I ended up.
Something's got to give, and I'm loving this.
Exactly. So by the mid-'80s, it was Wednesdays at the Lead Mill in Sheffield, Thursdays at the Fan Club in Leicester. Then I started the Hacienda on a Friday in '88, and then Saturdays at the Garage, and that was it until the early '90s. But I just did my thing, and then I was DJ of the month in ID magazine. That's when I thought, maybe this is something that might be a career. But even then, it was like, I'll give it a go. I can always go back to working in a record shop. I can always go back to putting a band
together. Maybe go to university.
Yes.
Because you deferred, I think, didn't you?
I did, but then bizarrely, just to jump forward to 2008, I ended up becoming a lecturer.
Of course you did, yeah. Which
weird.
What did Mum and Dad make of this at the time?
Oh, my dad was absolutely appalled. So I was about 22, 23, and I'm like, "Well, I'm giving up the record shop, Dad." What?
Yeah.
You're giving up a full-time job to do what? To DJ. He didn't get his head around it till a few years later, when went for a drink in his local pub, and here he is, my famous DJ son. But my mom always supported me through everything. Because of her musical background, I think. And I just went with the flow. I've always gone with the flow. I've never.
Well, you say that you're quite, as you say, you know what works, and you're not. You're in. You can go with the flow, but also you have your lane.
I imagine when I'm the best thing about being a DJ, and I've thought this for my entire career. The best thing about being a DJ is everyone's going crazy, having an amazing night, but I'm the only person in the whole club, whether it's 200 people, 2,000 people, or a festival with 20,000 people. I'm the only person who can hear what the next record sounds like when I mix it in.
Wow.
And then I go, gosh, if I was on the dance floor, I would freak out.
Yeah.
And then I'd do it.
Up it comes.
And if everyone does freak out, I'm like, this is the best job in the world.
That is the moment.
That's the moment.
Still.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you get the odd gig where that doesn't really happen.
Yeah. Did you have moments like that in Nottingham when you got the Technics and you stopped? Because the very first couple of times it happened, that must have been absolutely extraordinary.
Well, with the Technics, I was able for the first time ever to take 2 copies of the same record and start to chop them up. So I remember the 12.
People must have been looking at you it was like
there was some people
witchcraft.
No, there was some people who did get it. The people who kind of who read Record Mirror or the NME or Sounds, and they got it and they'd come and watch me with the crossfader chopping. My favourite, there was 2 copies of Run DMC's Peter Piper, the instrumental version, and cutting the piano on it that's sampled a jazz piano. And then my other favourite one was 2 copies of the Trevor Horn 12-inch mix of ABC's Look of Love, which is really long and weird, and you could cut the really weird bits and repeat them. I used to love that. Or what I used to do.
This is why you recorded everything, because that's so organic, isn't it? You have to record that, because that's art.
And I'd listen back to it and go,
So this is what people sometimes struggled with back in the day, was the idea that you were a creator. You were not a player or a vessel through which other people's work moved any more than an orchestra is or an artist. I mean, you were a creative force.
Well, I suppose if you want to examine it, maybe I was.
Of course you were.
But I was just having an absolute ball.
Also.
And 40 years later, I'm still having an absolute ball.
So, I mean, for me, it's the Hacienda that was.
Well, absolutely.
And I think for everybody, the mythology of it now is so immense. It's a bit like Woodstock. If everyone who was there who says they were there was actually there, they'd have been.
Yeah, but for me, it was a dream come true, because there I am working in a record shop in Nottingham, DJing at the Garage Club in Nottingham, but a massive Factory Records fan.
Right. And everything they release.
Yeah. So I've still got everything on 7-inch, 12-inch, 10-inch, limited edition, everything. And.
God, they knew how to market, didn't they? With all the special codes,
unbelievable.
And fact this and fact that.
So when they opened the nightclub,
Yeah.
Even though I was in Nottingham, I would get the train to Manchester.
Yeah.
Just to see a certain ratio, Crispy Ambulance to Rusty Column.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, oh, Factory Records. Then I met Mike Pickering at an ID magazine photo shoot about this.
Because you were both up and well, not up and coming.
Well, yeah, this new
hot new DJ.
Exactly, this new breed of DJ. So there was me, Pickering, Jazzy B, Mark Moore, Tim Simonon, Judge Jules, I think Jay Strongman, in this ID magazine photo shoot. And Mike and I realised that we were the only non-Southerners there.
Yeah, okay.
Or not just Southerners, Southeast.
Yeah.
He was getting the train home from Euston, I was getting the train home from St Pancras, so we shared a cab to the Euston Road, exchanged details, and agreed that everyone with the media were very biased towards the Southeast. So he rang me up and said, we should put our night on and call it the Northern House Review and show these Southerners what's really happening. Because house was already, this was 87, was already a thing, a scene in the North and the Midlands. Now, yes, there were DJs in London playing house, but it wasn't a scene. It was like pockets. And it wasn't until late 88 that London kind of got it.
Yeah.
So Mike and I put on a midweek night in February 88, invited up Record Mirror, Sounds, NME, Blitz, Face, ID, and it was amazing. And I thought, wow, I'm DJing at the Hacienda. And then a few weeks later, Mike rings up and goes, do you want to cover my Fridays when I'm on holiday? I'm like, I'd love to. You need to come up before you do it, though. I'm like, why? We did it recently together. Things have changed, and if you don't come up, you can't do it. So I went up, and of course, as soon as I walked in, I realised what had changed. Well, I didn't know it immediately. Well, I could see everything had changed. Everyone had these mad, wide eyes, and everyone suddenly dressing in this fluorescent, baggy stuff and bandanas. And when I went to the DJ booth, Mike had this wild look in his face, and then everything became clear.
Yeah.
So then I covered the Hacienda for 3 weeks, and in that 3 weeks, Mike was on holiday.
What month was this?
This would be May 88.
Yeah.
So just at the start of the Summer of Love. And I'm DJing, I'm on my own, doing the whole night, absolutely buzzing to be doing it. Knock on the door, open the door, it's Peter Hook. It's Bernard Sumner, it's Tony Wilson. Just got to come and say hi. I'm like, yeah, great. I'm like,
Especially the New Order boys,
Oh,
who you just
absolutely.
grown up. Absolutely.
And then Mike comes back. Heard it went really well. Do you want to stay? So we did Friday night and Nude Night together for many years. Then I get to know Wilson, Gretton, Sumner, everyone. Then in 1989, I get told, not asked, told, oh, you're off to North America to DJ on New Order's tour of North America. There's going to be Sugar Cubes, Public Image Limited. You do a DJ set, New Order play live at the end. So suddenly, and then now, I work very closely with Peter Hook, who I would now call a very
he owns everything, doesn't he? No, in a sense, since Tony died.
Peter Hook and the late Rob Gretton decided to register the name Hacienda. So we do Hacienda Classical together, and I still can't believe I have heated debates with Peter Hook, but it's Peter Hook.
Peter Hook. Yeah. So there's a 16-year-old kid at public school in Yorkshire at around this time who gets into the Manchester Youth Theatre.
Wow, really?
And arrives in Chorlton. It'd be July of that year.
What, 88?
Yeah.
Right.
And gets taken to a club. I think the first time we went, we didn't get in, so we went to the venue round the corner.
Right.
And the second time we went, we got in. And I was still wearing brogues.
Wow, there you go. You would have stood out. Yeah.
I did stand out. I was still wearing brogues. And I remember, and I think it would have been a Friday night, so you would have been on the decks. And I remember just standing there and thinking, everything changed for me in that moment. My relationship with Manchester, my relationship with music, my relationship with nightclubs, which in my mind were sort of sticky carpeted, mirror balled.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what happened for thousands of people. Yeah. Suddenly it didn't matter who you were. I think up until that summer of 88, there was still a lot about, but it was very tribal. If clubs catered to a soul crowd or a specific type of crowd, and people were kind of stuck in their little tribes or gangs. Suddenly at Hacienda you had barristers dancing next to window cleaners, football hooligans dancing next to hairdressers, gay, straight, whatever ethnic minority you were or whatever your cultural background, nobody cared. Now obviously there's a little pill that kind of added to that, but I think the acid house and the kind of suddenly there was a sense of community, a sense of inclusiveness that just grew from that moment.
There was nothing like it. So in a way it's very validating for me to hear you talk like that, Graeme, because my experiences up to that point had been so sheltered. I wonder if I mythologise it in the remembering, but if you as someone who was smack in the middle of it.
Mike and I actually were very aware of this. I remember one night one Friday night that summer, kind of pair of us just looking at the dance floor and looking at each other and going, just didn't even say a word to each other. That look that we knew this was something that we'd never witnessed before. And it grew.
Nobody had.
Well, nobody had. It grew and it grew, it spread. Because at the garage in Nottingham, I remember people in Manchester going, what's this garage club like that you do on a Saturday? So, well, why don't you come down? I'll sort you on the guest list. And they would come down from Manchester to Nottingham. One of them had a little bag of pills, and that's when things started to change in Nottingham. And Nottingham suddenly became a mini Hacienda. Everyone started dressing down, and it became more.
Dressing down was a big thing. Trainers and the whole
up until 88.
Dressing to dance.
Yeah, up until 88, everyone who was into the kind of music I was playing looked like they'd walked out the pages of ID magazine.
You dress up to go out.
Yeah, it was like hats. It was Catherine Hamnett for the girls. It was Paul Smith for the boys. A lot of MA1 flying jackets, 501s. And then suddenly, summer 88, it's shorts. It's girls wearing like bra tops and hot pants, denim shorts and bandanas. And it's like, whoa. But there's a great photographer called Dave Swindells who documented that whole era. And there's some great photographs. He came to the Hacienda in May 90, and there's some great pictures of me and Mike in the DJ box, and I'm like white 501s and long sleeve white t-shirt with a big kind of garish design, and that's just what it was like.
That's why you can never pick. You can probably, but other people can't pick themselves out in photographs because everyone was dressing the same.
Yeah, I can always pick myself out because one, I'm bald. I've always had
early adopter.
Yeah, similar glasses, and I can always tell by which watch I'm wearing, what year it is, and glasses as well.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And that really is that, isn't it? In a sense, is that from that summer onwards, your life was.
Oh, it just changed forever.
Written.
It was. Carried on doing Fridays with Mike for many years, and then the Hacienda to close for various well-documented reasons, gangs and drugs, and we reopened. And then Mike stayed on Fridays for a short period while I moved to Saturdays, but then he went off to do M People. And I stayed on Saturdays with Tom Wainwright, the greatest warm-up DJ ever. And we did Saturdays till the club closed in 97. Although at the start of 97, I moved to monthly Saturdays because I was in a position where I was starting to turn down so many offers. So that's why I missed the last night at the Hacienda. Nobody knew it was the last night until it was the last night. Yeah. And I found out by getting a fax.
Haslam played that night, I think. Did he?
And Elliot Eastwick. Yeah. But I got a fax I was in Australia. I got a fax from Cream to say, right, the Hacienda's closed. You've got no excuse now. You've got to come and work for us. Because they were desperate for me to go and do some stuff at Cream. Sure. But obviously because of that rivalry, I just couldn't. And then suddenly I did it. So I started doing monthly Fridays called what they called it, Full On, and it was me and guests in Liverpool, and that's where I met my wife. She used to work for Cream,
and the rest is history.
The rest is history, and it's our 25th wedding anniversary in January, which is bizarre.
And you're back in Liverpool,
and because my wife's a Scouser, I ended up moving to Liverpool.
So the highlights, do things stick out? I mean, Ministry, Gatecrasher.
Yeah, it was great being asked to be Friday night resident.
For people who don't know, and I'm sure most people still listening do.
Well,
you were royalty. Yeah, I mean, you could. No, you were.
No,
but you were.
But it's all relative.
No, I know it's all relative. But you could do whatever you wanted in this world. And you would be begged to do it. Like the Cream story proves that you could have one of the biggest clubs in the world and they would be coming to you.
Yeah, you can do what you want within reason. You've got to respect your audience, I think.
And your craft and your art.
Yeah, exactly. There are some DJs who did do what they wanted to do without respecting the audience, but I don't think they're around anymore.
Yeah, good point.
Getting to be the Friday night resident at Ministry of Sound when that opened was exciting. DJing with Tony Humphreys was exciting. But there's so many highlights. One of my big highlights is opening Glastonbury on the Pyramid stage in 2017 with Hacienda Classical. That's like a dream come true.
So where did the idea come from for Hacienda Classical? What is the idea for people who don't
It's reimagining... Right,
because on paper that's a pitch meeting that shouldn't really have led anywhere, should it?
From what I recall, it was there's a guy called Fletch who manages the Hacienda. He's fantastic at what he does. Whether it's Hacienda Club Nights, whether it's the website, whether it's the new book that's about to come out, or he manages it for Peter Hook. And it was after a club night. Me and him had probably drunk too much. We were in a bar in the hotel at 4 a.m. and it was like having this mad conversation about wouldn't it be great to do something with an orchestra. Well, yeah, that's right, because I was saying if there only was a way to keep the older crowd happy who just want to hear the old classics, and I'm happy to play them occasionally, but I'm sick of doing whole sets of just the same old classics. And this daft idea was like, we should do it with an orchestra or do it with a live band or something. And then we fell into bed, and the next morning we meet at breakfast, and it was Fletch who went, that daft idea we had last night? I said, well, sorry, which one was that? And then that's how Hacienda Classical...
Let's try it. Let's get a big orchestra and see what happens.
Yeah, but the thing is, that was like summer 2015. Yeah. Very quickly, I'm sat in a Costa in Wilmslow with Peter Hook and a guy called Tim Crooks, who is our conductor and arranger, and somebody from the Manchester Camerata talking about the logistics. I'm thinking, it sounds great. Thinking it's not going to happen. Next thing, Fletch is on the phone going, right, I've booked the Bridgewater Hall for February the 16th. Next year, 2016? Yes. And then suddenly I'm on the phone to Tim Crooks. How the hell are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And we worked it out. And what was supposed to be a one-off, just not picking the obvious tracks, because I wanted to do stuff like Voodoo Ray with an orchestra. And how it worked out was Tim said, I said, here's a mix. I've edited it down to 90 minutes because I reckon that's a good length.
Right.
He said, what about the interval? Mate, I've done it like a DJ set. There's no interval. So he came back and said, right, there's loads of bits the orchestra can't do. I said, like what? He goes, the acid house bits, the bass synth, the kick drum, the electronic drums. I went, great, that's how we'll do it. You score the orchestra and I'll do the electronic stuff. And it was supposed to be a one-off. It ended up being 14 dates.
Absolutely no business working.
20, no.
But now you explain it like this, it makes perfect sense.
But
I love the idea of your granddad's ghost watching over this.
That's exactly what I was going to say. My mum said to me many times, "Your grandpa would be so proud of you, looking down on you."
Yeah.
But 4 shows in, I realised this isn't working.
Right.
Now we've done 4 shows. This can be better. But of course, once everything's scored and arranged, you have to see the tour out. So I then had to spend weeks persuading Peter Hook I wanted to rip everything up and start again. And that meant 2017 onwards was not just 10 times better, 100 times better. And I stopped drinking in 2017 because that year, 2016, everything went mental.
Yeah.
I was doing Hacienda Classical, I was doing all the after parties, I was doing every Wednesday in Ibiza over the summer. And my wife, quite rightly, was getting very angry and concerned about my drinking and partying.
Sure.
And then George Michael died on Christmas Day, and because we were exactly the same age, that freaked me out. So I stopped drinking, and then everything went.
Because
really
you threw yourself into.
Yeah, because you've
got more space in your head. You've got more energy. You've got...
Yeah, because Mondays I was able to do stuff instead of waiting until Wednesday or Thursday to recover.
Right. Okay.
And then I stopped drinking for 4 years, but in lockdown, when clubs were shut and there was no work, and we're tidying the kitchen cupboards, found a bottle of amazingly expensive single malt that I'd clearly decided to keep.
For a very special occasion.
And my wife said, have a drink. I said, I don't drink. She said, yeah, no, you're not going to go out partying all weekend, are you?
Okay.
Have a drink. And I did. Two whiskies later, that's enough.
Interesting.
And that's what I do now, the odd drink, but I don't drink when I'm working.
So, moderation.
Exactly.
And Hacienda Classical went bonkers. I mean, truly bonkers all over the world. The Albert Hall. I mean,
we've taken it to Europe, Middle East. Dublin was great, and we didn't.
What does the audiences do when you're? What I mean, because they don't take the seats out.
No,
of the venues.
that's it. When we did our first show at the Bridgewater Hall, we all naively assumed everyone would come in, sit down, and listen to the orchestra. No, it was like a rave.
Yeah.
And we had lots of issues with the sound because the audience were like a wall of sound. And afterwards, couldn't hear the strings, Parky. And so we had a week to put it right. And that's where Peter Hook came in, because his years of touring with New Order, he said, right, I'm going to find a fix for this. And we found a fix for it.
Wow.
And so the second week was amazing. And that's when the Dome in Brighton got in touch, the Royal Albert Hall got in touch, festivals got in touch. Before we knew it, it was a whole year of touring. And then bizarrely, the last gig of the year, Peter Hook's flight to the Northeast got delayed, and we're having dinner, and the news came through that Peter Hook wasn't going to be here, and I'm like, who's going to sing Who's going to sing Blue Monday?
Yeah. And
because I'd done it as a joke at a sound check once, Tim, the conductor, and Audrey, who leads the choir, said, you'll have to do it. I'm like, yeah, seriously? They went, no, you did it in the sound check. So a few Heinekens later, and even Mike going, nah, you can't do it. I did it. I sang Blue Monday. So ironically, 40 years after leaving a band, I'm back in a band, albeit on a much grander scale. And then, biggest buzz of my life is singing Blue Monday.
Really?
With an orchestra.
Yeah.
And of course I know all the words.
Amazing.
Yeah.
When you talk about buzzes, is it comparable to the earliest days when with the classical stuff, when the crowd is just coming with you to the highest places?
Exactly. Playing the Pyramid Stage at Glastonbury, playing Royal Albert Hall, we've done that 4 times. Just doing a massive outdoor festival and people responding. But the thing is, with Hacienda Classical, everything's set in stone.
Yeah,
apart from what I do, because I've got samples
so
and different acapellas. I can confuse the hell out of the conductor and the orchestra by doing something different each show.
Got it.
And I love that. I get a buzz out of that as well.
But the orchestras must find it an incredible lease of liberation. Some of them.
Janet, our Latin percussion, our classical percussionist, Janet, she's about my age. Her and me and a guy called Graeme on cello, and Tim, the conductor, we're the only people who've done every show.
Right.
She absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
But you got a real variety of ages in the orchestra, and they all love it. And you see the orchestra stand up and clapping like this. It's the biggest buzz ever. There are other similar shows, but they're not as good. I know I'm biased, but they're not.
Of course they're not.
They don't have the same energy.
And you're back on stage in December, I think?
I'm basically working every weekend, and I have been for 40 years, and I love it. My website, thisisgraemepark.com, will tell you. December the 7th is the Hacienda Return to the Warehouse project with a massive lineup. We've just got back from doing Hacienda takeover of the Liam Gallagher weekend in Malta, which was, I've never seen so many bucket hats in one place. Do you know what? I hope to continue for a while. My mantra is, if I can get to continue to play music I like, and people continue to like the music I play, and people want to book me to do it, then I'll continue. As long as I've still got my health, obviously.
You never had boxes that you wanted to tick, did you really? You never, because you were there at the beginning, it wasn't as if you would be looking up and thinking, oh, I want to play there one day, or I want to play there. Because these vistas were opening in front of you as you were playing. So,
well, it's like... I became a DJ by accident.
Yeah.
I ended up on the radio by accident. I ended up being a lecturer. I'm now a senior lecturer by accident. Now, obviously, when I get an opportunity and I realise, oh, I like this and it appears I'm pretty good at it, I will grab onto it with two hands and make sure I can then keep that position. But none of those things I've never had a desire to be a DJ or a broadcaster. And that's what I tell my students. I lecture in creative media at Wrexham University, and I point out that don't get too hung up about what you want to do, but if you get an opportunity and you like it, then you need to grab it and work at it.
Yeah, the more specific.
And that's what I've done all my life,
yeah,
you know.
Well, and continue to do. We're pretty much out of time, but a quick word on the film, because it was, for a number of reasons, 24-hour party people... reach places that other films attempting to capture a zeitgeist, or even attempting to capture the club experience, have not managed to do.
I have never seen a film that captures the essence of a club as well as 24-hour party people. I mean, take for example, what's the film with Kirk Douglas and Sharon Stone in it? The club scenes in that, you know, the famous club scenes in that. Yeah, the club scenes in that rubbish. Who goes to a club wearing a green V-neck with no t-shirt? Even the Studio 54 film was it Mike Myers? Good film, but the club scenes weren't realistic. Suddenly, the 24-hour party people, the club scenes in that it is exactly like the Hacienda was. Yeah. The fact they rebuilt it with the original plans helps.
Amazing.
Me, Tony Wilson, and Peter Hook were invited by Channel 4 News to witness the inside of the Hacienda, being the proscenium arch being clawed by a JCB, and I regretted that.
I read that. You wish you hadn't gone.
On the way home, I regretted doing that. 6 weeks later, I'm in the Hacienda, which had been rebuilt from the inside. Excuse me, where's the toilet? Oh, you know where the toilet is. You know what I mean? And it was incredible. It was a very good film.
It didn't have a gay traitor, did it? The rebuilt one?
No, it didn't. It was just the ground floor. But I mean, Coogan was brilliant as Wilson. But he put his own twist on it, which was fantastic. And all the characters. It was a really, really good film. It was great to be part of that. Really good fun.
So, final question: how much time do you? Time, space, bandwidth, reflecting on this extraordinary juxtaposition of circumstance that left you in the very vanguard of an incredible moment in cultural history in this country, which you could now sit there with your Werther's originals and your rocking chair, couldn't you, and look back like an elder statesman. But actually, you're thinking about what you're going to be playing on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't really look back unless someone like you asks me about it, and it's nice to reminisce. And I'm not big on nostalgia.
No.
People say to me, "What's your best gig ever?" And I'll say, "I'd like to think that might not have happened yet," yeah. Which is, my way of always looking at things. I like to look forward, but various things that have happened in the past few years, for example, losing one of our sons to cancer, makes you realise that life is for living. Life's too short. So I'd much rather concentrate on what I'm doing now, what I might do in the future. Yeah, I'm very proud of my past and this heritage and this legacy. But other things become more important as you get older. Like, I can hopefully try and spend more time with my wife in the coming years. And because obviously every weekend, she used to come with me. She used to be my manager, didn't she? Then we had twins. Yeah. But I'm very... what's very important to me, I'm an ambassador of Sarcoma UK,
which is what Oliver died from.
Exactly,
you raise a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not just about the money; it's about the awareness, and that's very important to me as well. So that's something I really, really want to pursue, while I can, because you realise as you get older, everything's just gone in a flash.
Yeah.
I remember sat with my friends Gordon, Ken and Alan and David at Kirkcaldy High School, and we couldn't believe that in the year 2000 we'd be 36. That freaked us out. Well, suddenly I'm in my 60s. I'm 61, and Ben, who was Oliver's twin, has just left home to go to university, and it's suddenly me and Jen again, and everything's just gone in a heartbeat, in a flash, and you know, it's just it's difficult to comprehend that life does go that fast, but you don't realise that until you're approaching, well, not the end of it, but you're approaching the last leg, and who knows, I might get knocked over. When I leave here, I'm going to go and test the new Brompton G line.
Are you?
Yes.
Fantastic.
I might get knocked over when testing it. Let's hope not. Right. But I'm very proud of my past. But I just can't wait to this weekend. Where am I this weekend? Bristol. Hacienda night in Bristol with me, Todd Terry, Marshall Jefferson and Greg Wilson. People that I know, we can hang out. I can play amazing music. And then that's it. It's gone. I'll be looking to the next. It's like a football manager.
And you've got your October playlist to get stuck into as well.
Yes, I have. But it's like a football manager. Can I mention Aberdeen?
Yeah.
Jimmy Tilleen, 12 wins out of 12. But it's about the next game. As soon as you win, lose or draw, it's the next game. And that's what I suppose a gig is like a football match. You either win, lose or draw. But then when the club closes and you go back to your hotel, you're thinking about the next one. And that's my outlook on life, is what's round the corner. Who knows? I never thought I'd be on some of the guests you've had, and you've got me. That's fantastic.
This is going down as one of my all-time favourites, because that 16-year-old boy in his bloody brogues walking up the stairs at
Can't go wrong with a pair of brogues, though, James. I'm partial to a pair of brogues myself.
Right, yeah,
in the right environment.
Not on a dance floor, Graeme.
No.
Graeme Park, thank you.
James, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.